Club. I'm delighted to welcome Heather Townsend to the You and Your Business studio. Hiya, Heather.
Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a delight to be here.
My goodness, 6 books. We'll come around to those in a minute. You have people envious already. As you know, I take everybody back to their sort of last year in school and their plans going forward. Were you the academic? Were you the person going to travel the world, or what was on your mind?
I was the class SWAT.
Oh,
You
really?
know,
Oh,
I was
cool.
I was the one from the age of 3 who'd heard her mother talk in hallowed terms about the people that went to Oxford were the best of the best. So you can
Oh.
guess where I wanted to go, and that was Oxbridge. So i.e. either Oxford University or Cambridge University, doesn't matter which. And so and I was also, one of the things you'll hear about my story is
Right,
always this continual theme of I love a challenge, I'm attracted to a challenge, and I'm an
right.
absolute idiot for some of this stuff. And so I'd always been told there was a lot of engineering in my family.
Oh,
A lot of engineering in my family. So my grandfather actually lectured on it.
wow.
If I'd gone into the Navy to be an electrical engineer, I would have been fourth generation type stuff. My
Oh,
grandmother
wow.
kept telling me that. So of course I was going to be an engineer. And people kept telling me, oh, we need females in engineering. You've got to show them, you've got to see that. So it was that challenge again. So of course I was good
Yeah,
at maths, I was good at physics. I worked really hard. So I went to do engineering at Oxford University. So I was sponsored throughout university. So I
right.
was working for a multidisciplinary but predominantly civil engineering practice in
Okay.
my in the long summer holidays. And after I'd done the second thing, I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, I'm not enjoying this.
Right. Okay.
I went in it because I wanted to design bridges. And my friends had turned around to me and said, Heather, look, if you ever design a bridge and it gets built, can you tell us where it is so we can give it, never ever go over it? And by the way, if you're in a Middle Eastern country, there's a water ball that I've designed, please stay away from it.
Right.
And that conversation really struck home that I was only good at this stuff. And I've subsequently realized that I actually have directional dyslexia. So I have really, really poor spatial awareness. I have no left or right at all. This is part of the problem. So this is not good skills going into engineering. I also realized that I wanted to be creative, and I realized it was all about just use this standard, plug the numbers in. There was no creativeness about designing a bridge. You wanted to be an architect if you want to do that. I picked the wrong career, but I was 2 years
Right.
into a 4-year career. I couldn't just kind of go, I'm going to swap courses. I would have lost all the funding. So I was like, right, pick the remaining options that you really enjoy,
Hmm.
finish out, get your degree, and then do something else.
Okay. Right.
Oh, I'll carry on. I thought I was talking a bit too
No, no,
much.
no, no. I was fine. I was just thinking of spatial awareness and going into engineering. It's
Yeah,
still sort of resonating with me somewhat. But I mean, interesting that you're dogmatic enough to pursue the course to its end, even though you weren't enjoying it. But that wasn't going to be a theme through your life. So what happened after that? You finished uni. So where are
so
you
I,
going
I
next?
yeah, so I finished uni, and my mother said to me, "Oh, you're really good at organising." So I spoke to the careers advisor, and logistics supply chain came up. So I was like, right, and being at Oxford University, you've got all the major, the major blue chips, FTSE
Sure.
100 came onto what was then known as the milk round, and so
Yeah.
um, I stopped. I turned down 3 jobs,
All right.
and actually took the job with Procter and Gamble. My sponsored thing had basically rang me up and said, what day do you want to start your job? I'm like,
Right.
no, I'm not going to go into engineering. So I literally had 3 jobs on the table, and I stopped applying. Well, actually stopped. So I went to work for Procter and Gamble for 2 years in supply chain. So one of the highlights was
Right.
deciding, wait for this, deciding how many toilet rolls would go into each Asda store at the start of the Charmin toilet tissue launch. Highlight. Now, here's another highlight that I did. Wait for it. This is
Yeah.
this is gonna world domination. It's up there with world peace and all of that other stuff. One of my jobs was forecasting how many tester units for cosmetics would go into the Max Factor and CoverGirl makeup stands across the stores that stocked them for each, because you had a rolling program of every 2-3 months, you'd replace the next promotion. That was what I did for Procter & Gamble. Oh, and I've forgotten, at one point, I was responsible for the nation's teenagers being spot free with their Clearasil brand and making sure it was in stock.
Oh, well, that's a world-changing fact.
I know. And then they sacked me. You know, I wasn't, and here's the first lesson for your listeners. Culturally, I wasn't right for them.
Yeah.
I'm the sort of person that tells it like it is. And Procter & Gamble had to do a huge cultural program to get people to actually say what was wrong. You know, it was very much everything's great, everything's fine, happy clappy type thing. Great organization, but culturally I didn't fit in. And so they sacked me because I wasn't moving as far. I'd become the problem child. I wasn't getting promoted, and they needed my space for young graduates to come in. So I then got a job at Tesco's. So,
all right. Okay.
Yes. So I'm not, wait for it, I haven't crashed. So I'm sitting on the cashier desk, although when times are bad, it is quite tempting, that role. I got a job as the right-hand woman for a general manager in a £25 million distribution centre for Tesco.
Oh, right. Okay.
You know, this is the type where it's 24/7, runs 20 shifts across the week. The 21st shift is the cleaning shift. 1 million cases go out each week.
Wow.
And I was responsible for effectively doing everything apart from managing the operations. So I had the IT, the canteen, I was predicting the flow through and the finances and that kind of stuff. And after a year of that, because the problem with the 24/7 distribution center, particularly when some of my people that are responsible for were working night shift, early shift, late shift, is there's never a natural go home period.
Sure,
you might want to be in there for 5 a.m. to speak to the night shift before they go at 6. And then before you know it, you've got meetings up to 6 p.m. and you've spent 12, 13 hours. And that kind of operation is relentless. You know, I love the buzz. I absolutely love the buzz, but I was burning out. So I took a role came up internally to work in their training projects team.
All right.
I need a person that would be part of the team that designed all the training projects, whether we've got a new scanner in goods in through to a first line leadership program. And I took that role with the view that this was my 2-year stint in HR to build that general operations career, because I wanted to be head of a distribution center. Now, I took that role in 2000, and I'm still waiting to leave and finish my 2 years.
So the dogmatic part of you has sort of left you in one sense. I mean, you continued with your engineering degree to its conclusion, but this is one that's still open, is it?
Yeah, this is one that's still, and I think one of the theme of my stories is you're going to hear this. There are multiple career changes.
Yes.
Actually, you know, in 2000, I was only 25, and that's my third career change. You know, engineering. I'm not including being a Saturday girl at Halfords or having a paper round, but there is an incredibly hard work ethic that I have, an incredibly hard work ethic. And, you know, I knew with my engineering degree that actually I just needed to finish it, and just having Oxford would open my door. So it didn't need necessarily to be the subject. And I took that view. So, so I then, 3 years on from that role, Tesco had a big restructure at board level where they separated into UK ops, international ops. So they brought together the operations, the support operations for the stores in the UK and distribution. So suddenly my job was moving from Northampton down to Welwyn Garden City. So I'd known for a number of years that I've been a small office kind of person. I do not thrive in really, really big offices. It's not me. I love and have always thrived in those small teams.
Yes.
Small teams, big HQs are just not my thing. And so I was faced with this small satellite office going to the big Tesco's headquarters. They have 2 HQs, or they did at the time, and I was going to be in the bigger one. And I didn't want to drive 35 miles with the traffic instead of 35 miles against the traffic every day. So I took the redundancy on offer, had a very short-lived stint in a small consultancy firm, where the job that I was intended to do didn't end up, and I wasn't working, and it wasn't working for me. And I left at the 3-month period. So to this day, so I've already been sacked twice, made redundant once. I've had 3 career changes, and we're already at 2025. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it sounds like we're moving along. Just a quick question for you, Heather. And I'm always fascinated by this, particularly somebody who's worked in an organization, either at sort of head office level and then maybe, let me call it a branch level. Did you see this sort of experience, like 2 cultures, 1 organization?
Yes.
That there was a disconnect?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And I think, with my work in professional services, I always say to people, every different office, every different service line has a different culture.
Sure.
You've always got these microcosms. I love being in the type of building where I know everybody by name.
Yeah.
And that, and one of the things I learned across my journey is I always thought I was an extrovert.
Right.
Actually, I was an introvert. I'm a real introvert, playing at being an extrovert, and I was never my authentic self. And I think when you work in these big HQs, you're rewarded for being the out and out person. And for me to be the out and out person means that I put on a mask, and I couldn't be my authentic self. And I was always wondering, why were my peers who'd been at Oxford, starting to get quite senior positions, and I've been sacked twice, made redundant once at the age of 25. What was I doing wrong? And I think a key thing that anybody listening here, a lesson to take from my is, when you can be really authentic to yourself, that is at the point where your performance goes through the roof.
Yes.
And whenever I've been in a really authentic role or assignment, that's when I've been at my best.
I suppose we've been fortunate in a generational sort of way that our parents' generation would have always suggested a safe pensionable job for life, even though you mightn't like it. Whereas I think our generation has been really the first one to move it on from there and to be brave and take risks.
I don't know where I got it from, and I don't know where it was instilled in me, but I always had the ethos of, in corporate life, that you did 2 years in a role and then you needed to move on.
Sure.
And interestingly, I knew after doing 3 years with Tesco's in that training that I probably should have left a year earlier. I hadn't been. And I think a key point here is that you can have 20 years experience, or you can repeat 1 year for 20 years. And I think when you're in corporate life, it's really easy to get stale. If there's not some big movements forward in what you're learning, then you've got to move on.
Yeah, and I think also in large organizations, you get caught up in the politics of them.
Yeah. There's always politics in a branch office.
Yes.
But because there's less people, there's less numbers to create those politics. And so let's just move on a bit. So
yeah, I know BDO is your next port of call.
Yeah, it was my next port of call. So I've got utmost respect for Tesco's. It is a brilliant organization, but one of my main assets is my really, really high level of intelligence. And Oxford, it's not me being arrogant, it's my high level of intelligence. I'm incredibly bright. And Tesco's is a meritocracy. A lot of people have come up from the shop floor. So you've got really streetwise, commercial savvy people, but they might not be the quickest at getting it. So I was actually finding that one of my real talents was actually a negative within Tesco's. So a lot of people said, you've got to find an organization or a sector that really embraces and sees your intelligence as an asset, which is why I went to professional services, because they bring in loads of smart people. And, when I joined BDO as a people development manager, which was a role that did everything from business partnering to training design to training delivery to consultancy, internal consultancy, I really felt like I'd found my tribe.
Yeah.
I was suddenly getting feedback from meeting partners, positive feedback. Yeah, she's really sharp.
Right.
Which just wasn't, didn't get that feedback in Tesco. I'd get that. She's got to really focus a lot more on getting people to come along with her. Yes, just because she gets it doesn't mean to say others have, And so I did. So I did 4 years at BDO. Now, one of the things you need to realize in my journey is I had 2 maternity leaves. So for listeners that are considering their family planning, use it, because getting pregnant 7 months after you've given birth is not great for your career, and it's not great for your back either as a female. But actually, it did mean by the time, so let's put some context here. In 2008, Lehman Brothers went down, and we entered into the UK, and I think in Ireland, I think it was hit just as hard.
Oh yeah,
because the Celtic dragon basically got snuffed out, didn't it?
Oh, it certainly did. It certainly did.
A major recession that, there's not been like this COVID recession where we bounced out really quickly. It went on for 4 years, really deep, really dark. And in 2008, BDO realized that they'd doubled their top line, but their profit line hadn't changed.
Right. Okay.
And they'd invested ahead with loads of people, and that growth wasn't coming. So they cut 10% of their workforce, and half of my learning and development team just went. And I was part of that half. Now that I didn't grate being part of that half, because it was the best thing that could have happened to me. What grated was that when I was in BDO, I actually had a major salary increase to bring me in line with the team, because I'd been brought in as the junior person, whereas within 6 months, I turned around to my boss and said, hang on a minute, I'm seen as the highest performer, your best whatever, but I'm being paid 10 grand less.
Sure.
Or even more than 10 grand less than these people that I'm whatever. So I got this massive pay rise. So I was seen as the highest performer at the point I went on maternity leave. Now, for various reasons, my boss changed while I was away on maternity leave number 1. And so a year after I'd come back from maternity leave number 2, I was told that I was the weakest performer in the team.
The weakest link.
The weakest link. I had their belief on my capability and competence to be delivered for the future was the lowest.
Wow.
I hadn't changed.
I'm sure that must have rankled with you somewhat.
The fact that I bring it up now, 12 years later, means it's still rankled. And I think I'm a great believer in your business journey, doing it for you, staying in your own lane. But take the motivation from these events that happen to you, because there's a certain part of me that's been driven to make this running my own business a success for that reason. So by the age of 33, I've been made redundant twice. I've been sacked twice. I was now about to run my own business, and I was starting on my 4th career, because I'd always wanted for a long time to run my own business, to be my own person. One of my values is about independence, autonomy, freedom. I realized within 2 weeks of leading corporate life that I'd come home, that I'd been in corporate life a square peg within a round hole. And that was the reason why I just hadn't progressed my career. At a point I'd left, some of my peers were making partner. They were, getting to these senior VP positions. And it wasn't because I wasn't as good as them. It was because I wasn't in the right environment. Big thing was I just wasn't playing to my strengths.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you have to travel the world to find your home.
Yeah.
And so at least you've done that. It's not a case of looking back at, with regret at the say BDO and I could be a partner there today. You've been there, done that, saw what it was about and moved on. So, there was lessons learned.
Absolutely. I mean, if it all went kind of really badly wrong and I had to get a proper job, which it hasn't, cross fingers so far, would I go back in as a head of L&D or head of talent? Possibly. I could have an awful lot of fun, and I know a huge amount about what it takes to build a talent pipeline at a senior end. Would I enjoy it? No.
Well, that's it. Okay, so we're talking about sort of breaking out on your own. I mean, there's obviously some challenges because there's no guaranteed income. How are you going to set up? You have 2 small children and the challenges that brings on board. Tell us a bit about that experience and how you went about it.
Yeah, so at the point I incorporated, my eldest had just turned 3 and my youngest was 1. We're also in the point of the deepest, darkest recession. I just spent 4 years and so by what was it? So it was 14 months after I'd started in this new firm, I went on maternity leave number 1.
Sure.
And then, I didn't have much time back before I went on maternity leave number 2. I'd done the classic thing that every part-timer does that's a new parent. I put my head down and got on with my work. So I had no network.
Right.
The network that I had did not have a budget because there was no training budgets within professional services at that time. And the people that I was close to were also looking for a job. It's not the best time to go out on your own.
You've just discovered that.
Yes. Well, I always knew that if I could make a success of it then,
yes,
hell, it would become easier. And
well, it certainly puts discipline on you.
yeah. And you know what? I had a small redundancy payment behind me.
Right.
I had enough money to last me for 6 months. And I often say to people when they see members of their team saying, who are going to start out on their own and go, oh, they'll never make it. And I turn around to them and I'll say, the need to put food on the table is the biggest motivator that you need to make stuff happen. And I say that to people. I say, don't count them out just because they were crap at being commercial with you. There's a very different mindset when you need to be able to put your own food on the table and back yourself. So I started the first year with some associate work, like a lot of people in my position. As it happens, I was interviewing for some interim roles while I was considering setting up. And interestingly, the guy that was doing the outplacement, I had a chat with him and he said, look, I've got work for you. Would you like it? And I said,
right.
oh, yes. So I had enough work to keep the wolf from the door for the first year. And as it happens, I went along to one of these because I had 2 young children. There wasn't the money to go into London to network in person because that would have been paying a babysitter for 6 hours. That would have been, my husband worked shifts, so, he wasn't always there. That would have been the train fare.
Yeah.
And then the cost of going into whatever event, you wouldn't be getting much change out of 120 quid.
Exactly.
And, I just didn't have that at the time. We were very much holidays where we bought a tent, Exactly. We had some fun camping holidays. But so I went along to one of these local networking events where it was introduction to, it wasn't social networking. When this guy said you can win lots of business using social media. Now this was 3 months after Stephen Fry got caught in the lift, when Twitter went from something that strange people did to the early adopters and mainstream. Right. So that next morning, I wrote my first blog. I set up my Twitter account, and I became the queen of Twitter. And I really enjoyed blogging. Now, bear in mind that I'd done one of these Gallup, where's your strengths services, the Gallup one, and it come out as communication. I said, that's wrong. I struggle with writing things down. Interestingly, I loved blogging. Absolutely loved just being able to pour out my heart. And I suddenly realized that I loved writing.
Okay.
I was crap at essays at school, but I really loved this free form, get my ideas out. And I realized that actually I was a true communicator. So back then in 2009, the whole world was trying to suss out social media. So you had the marketing people over there, which were basically just having a party, because that's what they do, don't they?
Yeah.
They got their crayons out and they were playing. You then had the what I would call old school networkers who were saying it's never going to catch on. Never going to catch on. You've got to see the whites of their eyes. And I was the first person really in the marketplace that said, hang on, it's not about either or. It's about both. It's about using the right tool for the right job. And I built up my Twitter following. And I get this, Alec, the small county of Bedfordshire, of which I reside in, I was seen as the most influential tweeter for quite some time,
Very good.
I hope you realise you're in the presence of greatness.
Excellent. I'm sure I am. It's great. Can I ask you a question, Heather, while we're here? This is moving along swimmingly well. The challenge we have is time, because I see we're down to 1.5 minutes and we haven't even touched your books. Is there a chance for a second interview, part 2? Because you'd be one of the few I'd ever have back.
Oh yeah, we could do life before business. We could do life after business. So
yeah, I'd love to do that, because I'd hate to try and cram in where we're only getting going for your career.
Yeah. So I think just to almost finish this, to whet people's appetite for part two,
Yeah.
I think we need to get to the first book.
Yes.
I think we'll get to the first book and then we'll stop there and we can have episode 2.
So we have a minute on that then.
So I was spending this year, and more people were asking me, so how are you winning business via Twitter? And I realized, and actually it was a lady called Bryony Thomas, who I'd been coaching at the time, who wanted to be this professional speaker. And she said, well, to do that, you have to have a book. And I thought, well, that sounds like a good idea. I'll have a book. And the book I'd always intended to write was How to Make Partners Still Have a Life. But I realized there was an immediate need to write a book that really embraced online and offline networking as equal tools, because nothing did at the time. If there was anything on this e-networking thing, it was one chapter in the whole book. So I set out to write that book and I started blogging about it. I started talking about it. And then a lady called Liz Guster, who is the commissioning editor for the Financial Times Guide series, got in touch with me and said, would you write a book for us? Oh. So I did the full proposal to write a book on networking, which was going to be called Joined Up Networking. She then turned around to me and said, the big idea is we want this to be the Financial Times Guide to Business Networking. Will you do that?
Wow.
And I thought for a split second and then said yes. And then from literally that point onwards, my work shifted from surviving on associate work to people coming to me directly to help them generate business through networking. And well, that's the point where we go, pause.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic. Wow, I'm looking forward to the second interview already.